Starting this month, immigration in America is entering an entirely new phase. Green cards can now be denied based on your online posts. USCIS officers are being armed. The citizenship test may become one of the hardest in decades. And ICE agents in Los Angeles just received approval to stop people simply because of how they look or speak. This isn't just a small policy adjustment. This is a fundamental reset in how the U.S. treats immigrants. And the consequences will touch students, workers, and families everywhere. This is Immiscope, your trusted source for U.S. immigration news, policy changes, and visa updates. September 2025 has brought one of the most dramatic shifts in immigration policy we've seen in years. Multiple federal agencies, from USCIS to ICE, are rolling out new powers and enforcement tools. And the Supreme Court has weighed in, making it easier for immigration agents to conduct raids in immigrant-heavy communities. Whether you're applying for a green card, working on an H-1B, studying on an F-1 visa, or hoping for U.S. citizenship, these updates affect you. So let's break it down one change at a time so you know what's really happening and what it means for your future. Anti-American views can impact green cards and naturalization. For the first time, U.S. immigration law will formally consider whether an applicant holds anti-American views. USCIS officers are now required to assess whether an individual has supported or promoted anti-American ideologies, aligned with groups linked to terrorism or extremist violence, engaged in anti-Semitic activities or hate-fueled movements. This does not mean every critic of the U.S. government will be denied. Freedom of speech and political disagreement remain protected. But if your online content or public actions suggest you support violent groups or advocate for the destruction of American institutions, that could now count against you in green card or naturalization decisions. USCIS Director Joseph Edlow emphasized that this policy is not about silencing dissent. Instead, he described it as a safeguard against applicants who actively promote violence or hate under the banner of immigration benefits. The takeaway: immigration is no longer only about paperwork and family ties. Your values and how they appear online are now part of the decision-making process. Yes, your online activity is fair game. Rumors about immigration officers scanning Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok have circulated for years. Now it's no longer speculation. USCIS confirmed it can review applicants' online presence, including social media posts and videos, likes, shares, and reposts, a public group memberships, a documented participation in controversial protests. One or two isolated comments probably won't determine your future. But if your digital footprint shows a consistent pattern of extremist or hate-driven content, it could factor heavily in your case. Think of it this way: your immigration file now includes your online voice. That means cleaning up your digital footprint before submitting an application has never been more important. USCIS officers will now be armed. Perhaps the most surprising update: USCIS is transforming into a partial enforcement agency. Until now, USCIS processed forms and handled benefits. If fraud or criminal activity was suspected, cases were handed over to ICE or Homeland Security investigations. That process is ending. USCIS is creating its own law enforcement branch with armed officers who will be authorized to make arrests, carry out search warrants, and investigate complex fraud operations. Their focus will not be ordinary applicants. Instead, this unit will target criminal enterprises like marriage fraud rings, fraudulent asylum operations, and organized networks abusing immigration loopholes. This is a significant shift. It signals that immigration services are no longer just administrative. They are becoming part of direct enforcement in America's immigration system. Citizenship tests likely to become more difficult. If you're preparing for naturalization, brace for stricter testing. USCIS leadership has signaled plans to roll back the easier Biden-era test and potentially go even further than the Trump-era 2020 version. The changes being discussed include a larger pool of civics questions, focusing on deeper constitutional knowledge, a stronger English requirements, possibly including a written essay section, an emphasis on interpretation and explanation, not just memorized answers. Officials argue the current test doesn't reflect true understanding of American values. But for immigrants, this means additional preparation and potentially higher failure rates. For those who already struggle with language barriers, this could present a serious obstacle on the path to citizenship. H-1B program under pressure again. The H-1B visa, long used by tech companies to recruit skilled foreign workers, is also in the spotlight. Officials argue that some employers are using the program to cut costs, hiring foreign workers at lower wages than Americans in similar positions. This means tougher reviews of labor condition applications, closer examination of job descriptions, and stricter penalties for mismatches between what's on paper and what's happening in reality. If you're on an H-1B, ensure your job role, duties, and wages align perfectly with your filings. Any discrepancy could now invite deeper investigations. OPT students under new scrutiny. Optional practical training, known as OPT, allows international students to work temporarily in the U.S. after graduation. Over 240,000 students currently use the program, with STEM graduates eligible for up to 3 years of work authorization. Now, USCIS is questioning whether this program harms U.S. workers by giving companies cheaper alternatives to domestic graduates. While no immediate rule changes have been announced, expect heavier scrutiny of applications, closer wage monitoring, and stricter compliance checks. For students, the message is clear. OPT is no longer guaranteed, and even approved work permits could face tighter oversight. Supreme Court clears ICE to resume LA raids. A 6-3 Supreme Court ruling has lifted restrictions on ICE raids in Los Angeles, dramatically expanding the agency's power. Agents may now stop individuals based on common-sense factors, including language, appearance, or type of work. Justice Sotomayor warned in her dissent that this ruling effectively makes all Latinos working low-wage jobs fair game for detention, regardless of their citizenship status. This means street-level encounters with ICE are likely to rise across Los Angeles and other immigrant-heavy areas. For residents, the advice is clear. Carry ID, know your rights, and avoid unnecessary risks in public spaces. USCIS is now involved in voter roll verification. In a quieter but highly controversial move, USCIS will assist state governments in verifying voter eligibility through the SAVE system. Local officials will be able to check legal status with just the last 4 digits of a social security number and can even submit large batches for verification. Supporters claim this prevents voter fraud. Critics warn it risks purging eligible voters, particularly naturalized citizens and long-term legal residents. This development intertwines immigration with voting rights in ways that could spark significant challenges during future election cycles. Massive ICE raid in Georgia shocks diplomats. Earlier this month, ICE carried out the largest single-site immigration raid in U.S. history at a Hyundai LG EV battery plant in Georgia. Nearly 500 workers were detained. Over 300 South Koreans were deported within days. Others included workers from Japan, China, and Indonesia. Most were accused of working on business visas that do not allow manual labor. The raid has already strained diplomatic relations with South Korea, one of America's key trading partners. And critics warn it could disrupt supply chains for batteries, semiconductors, and other technology industries. Population impact of new deportation policies. The Congressional Budget Office projects that current enforcement plans could remove around 320,000 people over the next decade. By 2035, this would reduce overall U.S. population growth by nearly 4.5 million, a significant slowdown at a time when birth rates are already declining. Economists warn this could trigger labor shortages, fewer working-age adults, and slower economic growth. The White House argues a baby boom will offset these losses, but experts remain skeptical. Good news and bad news. There is both relief and risk in these new policies. The good news: USCIS has clarified what kinds of speech or activity are disqualifying, creating clearer guidelines for applicants. A clean, well-prepared applications are still being approved at high volume. A diplomatic pressure, especially from countries like South Korea, may force carve-outs or new visa pathways. The bad news: a social media content once seen as personal is now immigration evidence. As students and skilled workers face tighter restrictions on OPT and H-1B visas, a naturalization is about to get harder. And in Los Angeles, ICE encounters are likely to increase sharply. These changes mark a turning point in U.S. immigration policy. It's no longer just about forms and applications. Now your digital footprint, your values, your workplace, and even your appearance can play a role. For immigrants, whether students, workers, or long-term residents, the margin for error is shrinking. Stay informed, stay cautious, and prepare your case carefully. If you like this video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon for future updates. Thanks for watching Immiscope. See you in the next video.